Morning light stretched across the airport floor, glinting off silver suitcases and polished shoes. Travelers moved in slow rhythm, guided by boarding calls and half-heard announcements. Among them stood Karen, her ticket trembling slightly between her fingers. She scanned the seating screen, her eyes narrowing when she noticed the names beside hers: Lena Carter plus 2 minors. Her polite smile faltered, replaced by something colder, more careful. The kind of discomfort people disguise as preference. Stepping toward the attendant, Karen softened her tone, the way people do when they're about to say something they know they shouldn't. "Could I change my seat?" she asked lightly, pretending to laugh. "It's just, I get anxious sitting near children." The attendant, tired but patient, glanced at the list, then at Lena, a composed black woman holding the hands of her twin boys, both quietly humming a song. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the attendant said. "The flight's completely full." Karen's lips curved into a brittle smile. "Of course," she replied, but her eyes lingered, not on the empty seats, but on Lena and her boys. Their gaze met briefly. Lena offered a gentle nod that went unanswered. Around them, the crowd shifted, pretending not to notice the tension that had suddenly settled over Gate 24. Lena leaned toward her sons, whispering softly, "Remember what I told you. Keep your heads high, no matter what." One of the boys asked quietly, "Even when people don't smile back?" She smiled, holding his hand tighter. "Especially then." The boarding call echoed again, louder this time. Karen adjusted her bag and stepped forward, unaware that the seat she was trying to avoid would become the lesson she could never escape. And that silence, in this airport, already sounded like judgment. The sound of boarding passes scanning filled the narrow jet bridge. Karen stepped onto the plane with the air of someone used to being accommodated. She adjusted her pearl earrings and smiled at the flight attendant, the kind of smile that came with unspoken expectations. "Excuse me," she began softly, handing over her ticket. "There must be some mistake. My seat's beside them." Her chin tilted subtly toward Lena and her sons already seated by the window. The attendant blinked, unsure how to respond. "Ma'am, your seat is correct, a 14B. Karen kept her tone light, almost kind. "I just think it would be better for everyone if I sat elsewhere. Maybe near the front?" The politeness of her words only sharpened their intent. Lena didn't look up at first. She fixed her sons' seatbelts, smoothing their shirts with quiet grace. But when one of them whispered, "Mom, is she talking about us?" Lena finally raised her eyes. Her voice came out calm, steady. "It's okay, sweetheart. Some people are scared of sharing air." Karen stiffened, her composure cracking for just a moment. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly, glancing at the others who were now watching. The attendant shifted awkwardly, murmuring, "Ma'am, please take your seat so we can begin boarding." As Karen reluctantly sat down, silence settled between them, thick, uncomfortable. The twins pressed close to their mother while Karen stared straight ahead, pretending to check her phone. Narration drifted like quiet turbulence. Prejudice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sits politely, crossing its legs, pretending to be discomfort. But even silence can wound. Lena leaned slightly toward the window, whispering to her boys, "Breathe easy. Let her carry the weight of what she's afraid to see." The air inside the cabin felt thinner now. Conversations dulled into whispers. Glances darted between phones and seat rows. Lena sat upright, her posture calm but her chest heavy, not from fear but from the familiar ache of being watched. Her sons fidgeted beside her, sensing tension they couldn't name. One of them, Malik, tugged her sleeve gently. "Mom," he whispered, "did we do something wrong?" Lena turned to him, her smile tender but trembling at the edges. "No, baby. Sometimes people see wrong where there isn't any. That's their mistake, not ours." Karen shifted uncomfortably, pretending to look out the window. Her reflection stared back, pale, expressionless, unsure. The pilot's announcement echoed faintly, but her mind was caught on Lena's words. She didn't understand why they stung. A flight attendant approached, crouching near Lena. "Ma'am, everything all right here?" The tone was polite, cautious, the kind used when management might get involved. Lena nodded. We're fine. Just teaching my boys about patience. Her voice was steady, almost serene. Karen's eyes flicked toward her, defensive. You're making this bigger than it is, she muttered under her breath. Lena didn't flinch. She simply replied, You already did when you stood up. The words landed softly, but their truth burned. The passengers nearby pretended to scroll through their phones, pretending not to have heard. Yet something had shifted. The air, the posture, the quiet shame hanging between them. Narration lingered like breath on glass. A smile can weigh more than a scream when the world expects you to bow. And sometimes calm becomes the loudest protest. Lena turned back to her sons, whispering, We don't match her hate, baby. We rise above it. And this time, her smile didn't tremble. The hum of the engines softened, as if the plane itself was holding its breath. Captain Hawthorne stood at the front of the aisle, eyes steady, his uniform crisp yet heavy with quiet authority. Karen froze, halfway between indignation and disbelief. Excuse me? She stammered, her voice cracking for the first time. The captain didn't raise his tone. You heard me, ma'am. This flight doesn't accommodate prejudice. You may choose to sit or to step off. Gasps rippled through the cabin. A few passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Others lowered their phones, realizing something larger than travel was unfolding. Lena sat still, her son's hands clutched tightly in hers, her eyes locked on the captain, not out of surprise, but out of quiet recognition. Someone had finally said what so many had swallowed for years. Karen tried to gather her composure. You can't talk to me like that. I paid for this seat. The captain's reply was soft, almost kind. And they paid for their dignity. Both are valid. Only one is non-negotiable. Silence swallowed the cabin whole. Even the crying toddler 2 rows back quieted as if the moment demanded reverence. Karen's shoulders slumped. The certainty she wore like perfume began to fade. I just wanted to be comfortable, she whispered. Lena turned to her, her voice barely audible. Comfort shouldn't come from someone else's pain. The captain gave a small nod, stepping back. We'll be taking off shortly. Narration followed, slow and deliberate. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands tall enough to make injustice look small. Karen sat down. Her face turned toward the window. But for the first time, she didn't see the sky as hers alone. The first phone lifted like a quiet rebellion. Then another. Within seconds, the air was filled with the faint clicks of record buttons, the sound of digital witnesses awakening. Karen's eyes darted toward the crowd, realizing too late that her discomfort was no longer private. She straightened her posture, forcing composure. You're all misunderstanding, she said, her tone brittle. I just wanted a seat change, the woman across the aisle muttered. Yeah, we heard. Her voice wasn't loud, but it spread like a match through dry air. Lena sat still, her boys pressed close to her side. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The world was watching now, finally watching. The light from dozens of phone screens flickered against her face, soft and cold. Karen tried to salvage control. You're recording a lie, she snapped. You don't know what really happened. The pilot's calm voice over the intercom interrupted her panic. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. That single line carried more authority than her outrage ever could. Narration bled through the stillness. Sometimes justice doesn't knock. It streams live. Karen's hand shook as she reached for her bag, realizing the seat she once guarded so fiercely had turned into her stage. Stop filming me, she barked, her voice cracking. No one did. Even silence had turned against her. A little boy, Lena's youngest, looked up and whispered, Mom, why are they staring? Lena brushed his cheek softly. Because truth makes people look twice. Karen's reflection in the window trembled. The face staring back wasn't confident anymore. It was small, frightened, and exposed. The camera never blinks, the narration whispered. It remembers every choice, especially the ones made in hate. Karen sat in her car that night, the faint sound of notifications echoing from her phone, clips of herself, everywhere. She didn't press play. She didn't need to. She already knew what the world was calling her, a racist. The word felt foreign, like a language she'd never been taught but had always spoken. Her mother's voice surfaced in memory, calm, polite, poisonous. "We treat everyone the same, dear, as long as they know their place." Karen had nodded once, too young to understand, too old to question. That same phrase had echoed through church luncheons, family dinners, and neighborhood meetings, a rhythm of bias disguised as tradition. Meanwhile, Lena's memories flickered like old film reels, fluorescent lights in a diner, her mother's weary hands wiping down tables, prayers whispered into tired palms. "You work twice as hard, baby," her mother used to say. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Karen had grown up hearing that fairness was balance. Lena had grown up learning it was survival. At a red light, Karen's mind drifted to the neighbor her parents never invited, the teacher they mocked, the housekeeper they underpaid but treated like family. She had laughed along then. Everyone did. Now her laughter tasted like rust. Lena, at home, folded laundry in silence. Her sons slept, unaware that their mother had just taught the world how to stand without shouting. She whispered a small prayer, not for Karen, but for the boys watching. Narration lingered softly. Hate isn't born in a moment. It's taught in glances, served in jokes, and passed down like recipes. Karen exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. For the first time, she wondered, what if they were all wrong about what was right? The clip exploded across screens before the plane even landed. By morning, it wasn't a flight, and it was a headline. "White passenger refuses to sit with black twins." Millions watched the moment Karen folded her arms, the disgust in her face, the quiet dignity of the mother beside her. Every frame told a truth Karen never meant to share. At corporate headquarters, the airline boardroom buzzed like a nest hit by a stick. "We can't let this define us," one executive muttered. "It already has," another replied, eyes fixed on the muted screen where Karen's face froze mid-sneer. A PR rep sighed. "We'll issue a statement. Diversity, inclusion, all the usual." But the pilot's words echoed from the clip. "Maybe it's time it does." Silence swallowed the room. Meanwhile, Lena sat with her sons in their small living room. The TV glowed with her pain replayed on endless loops. Her oldest whispered, "Mom, they're saying you're brave." She smiled faintly. "I wasn't brave, baby. I was just tired." Karen's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, threats, apologies. Her daughter texted once, "Mom, what did you do?" She typed back 3 times, deleted each one, and set the phone down. Outside, cameras waited, their lenses cold and curious. In a radio interview, Captain Hawthorne's calm voice cut through the chaos. "People think silence keeps peace. It doesn't. It only hides the mess under better lighting." His tone was steady, stripped of anger, filled with something heavier, truth. Narration wrapped the moment softly. Some people watched to judge, some to learn, but a very few, watched to change. The world was watching now, and this time, no one looked away. Karen sat alone in the dim light of her living room, the blue glare of her phone washing over her face. Comment after comment, racist, disgusting. This woman should be banned for life. Filled her screen like a storm she couldn't escape. She whispered to herself, I was just uncomfortable." The words sounded smaller now, stripped of the power they once carried on that plane. Down the street, in a modest apartment, Lena's boys watched the same video, themselves frozen in time. The younger twin frowned. "Mom, did we do something wrong?" Lena looked at them, her eyes heavy yet kind. "No, baby," she said softly. "We just reminded them what right looks like." Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Karen scrolled again. A clip of the pilot's voice surfaced, replayed by millions. "If you can't sit beside them, ma'am, you won't fly with us at all." She watched his steadiness, the crowd's quiet approval, and felt something shift. Not guilt yet, but a crack. Her daughter's message blinked again. "Mom, people at school saw the video," Karen typed back. "It's not what it looks like," then erased it before hitting send. In that silence, her reflection stared back at her from the black screen, eyes she didn't recognize. For the first time, she saw herself not as the victim, but as the reason everyone had stopped pretending. Lena turned off the TV and hugged her boys close. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered again. But this time, her voice carried further, through the walls, through the noise, into the hearts of those still watching, still judging. Somewhere between shame and truth, both women finally saw the same mirror. The courtroom was colder than the cameras could show. Karen sat stiffly, fingers knotted together, her lawyer whispering rehearsed lines that already sounded hollow. Reporters filled the back rows, pens ready, eyes hungry. The twins sat beside their mother, small hands folded in quiet patience. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. The silence around them carried more truth than any testimony that day. "Mrs. Whitman," the attorney began, "you maintain that you acted out of discomfort, not discrimination." Karen's voice trembled. "Yes, I was just uncomfortable," he finished for her, nodding. "We understand." From across the room, Captain Hawthorne's gaze didn't waver. When he finally rose, the air seemed to shift. "Permission to speak?" he asked the judge. The courtroom quieted. Even Karen's lawyer leaned back, suddenly unsure. Hawthorne's tone was calm, firm, but not angry. "I've flown passengers for 20 years. I've seen fear, grief, arrogance, but I've never seen discomfort mistaken for dignity." He paused, eyes on Karen. "Dignity isn't a seat upgrade." A hush rippled through the room. Karen's jaw quivered, her eyes glistening as if the line had pierced something she'd spent her life guarding. Her lawyer cleared his throat, fumbling for words, but even the judge didn't interrupt. For one suspended moment, the world held its breath. Lena reached over, resting her hand gently on her son's. Her touch was soft, steady. The same calm that had silenced hate in the air now filled the courtroom. The verdict hadn't been read yet, but everyone already knew. Justice had arrived, not through shouting or punishment, but through restraint. As cameras flashed, Karen lowered her head. Not from defeat, but from the unbearable weight of seeing herself finally, without excuses. The gavel struck once, not loud, but sharp enough to echo through every chest in the room. Karen sat frozen, her posture collapsing in slow motion. The verdict had been read, yet it was Lena's words that still lingered in the air like truth refusing to fade. "I didn't need her kindness, just respect." Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, but Lena's gaze stayed on her sons, calm, unbroken. The twins looked up, confusion still etched in their eyes. "Mama, did we win?" one whispered. She smiled faintly. "Baby, we didn't have to win. We just had to be seen." Across the room, Karen's lawyer leaned close. "We can appeal," he muttered. But she didn't answer. The hum of voices around her felt distant, muffled, meaningless. On the screen above, her name trended. Karen Whitman, Harpa Skyline verdict. Words she once used to define others now defined her. Captain Hawthorne stood by the door, hands clasped behind him, watching without triumph. "Justice doesn't always roar," he murmured quietly to a nearby officer. "Sometimes it just breathes." The officer nodded, eyes on Lena's family. Karen's trembling hand reached for her purse. "They made me look like a monster," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Hawthorne's steady voice cut through the room, low, unwavering. "No one made you look that way. The camera just stopped lying." Silence filled the space again, heavier this time, not with anger but with consequence. The same seat Karen had refused had become her mirror. As the judge rose and people began to leave, Lena guided her sons toward the exit. The crowd parted quietly, not out of pity, but respect. For once, pride didn't walk out first class. It walked out humbled. Rain slid down the glass like tears the sky didn't bother to hide. Karen sat alone, her reflection faintly visible against the glow of her laptop screen. The headline was everywhere. "The pilot who taught America a lesson in 3 minutes." Beneath it, a still image of her face, mid-protest, frozen forever in judgment. She shut the screen, but the silence only grew louder. Her phone buzzed once, a message from her sister. "You should apologize." She stared at it for a long time before replying, "To who?" Then deleted it. A faint knock broke the quiet. Her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Collins, stepped in without waiting. "You okay, Karen?" she asked softly. Karen gave a bitter laugh. "You mean, am I still racist or just ruined?" Mrs. Collins sighed, sitting across from her. "I mean, do you still believe what you said that day?" Karen looked down at her hands, the ones that had once pointed, refused, separated. "I didn't think I hated anyone," she whispered. "I just thought I was better." The words tasted strange, like truth she wasn't ready to own. Outside, thunder rolled low. Mrs. Collins reached for her coat. "Maybe start by not needing to be better," she said gently, standing to leave. Karen didn't stop her. She just watched the rain, steady, forgiving, relentless. "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" she murmured. Mrs. Collins paused at the door. "Forgiveness isn't theirs to prove. It's yours to earn." Then she was gone. The clock ticked. Karen exhaled, slow and hollow. Somewhere, far away, she imagined Lena tucking her boys into bed, teaching them grace in a world that had forgotten how. For the first time, Karen wished she'd listened sooner, before silence became her only company. The cafe hummed with quiet, laughter and the clinking of mugs, ordinary sounds that once felt impossible to Lena. Her boys sat across from her, sharing a slice of pie, arguing playfully over the last bite. She smiled, not because life had suddenly turned fair, but because for once it felt hers. The bell above the door chimed. Lena looked up. Captain Hawthorne walked in, dressed in his uniform, eyes tired but calm. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. He saw her, too. Their gazes met. Two people bound by a moment that had changed more than just their own lives. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Lena's fingers tightened around her cup. Her youngest looked up, whispering, "Mama, that's the pilot." She nodded slowly. "Yes, baby. That's him." Hawthorne hesitated, then offered a small, respectful nod, the kind that said, "I remember, and I'm sorry." It wasn't grand or public. It was human. Lena nodded back. No smile, no bitterness. Just a quiet acceptance that carried more weight than any apology ever could. The tension that once chained her chest loosened, just slightly. The past still lived somewhere between them, but in that second, it no longer ruled them. Hawthorne stepped aside, ordered his coffee, and left without another word. But the silence he left behind wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Her eldest leaned forward. "You forgave him?" Lena looked out the window, the rain soft against the glass again. "Forgiveness doesn't mean he was right," she said softly. "It means I'm free." Her boys went quiet, watching her as she exhaled, slow, steady, unbroken. Justice no longer shouted. It simply was. And for the first time, Lena's peace didn't need to be defended.